Welcome to the Horror Hive, where we delve into the darkest corners of humanity. In this video, we'll be exploring 10 of the most shocking cases where a criminal was proven not guilty on trial, despite being accused of committing heinous crimes. These cases have not only left the victims' families devastated, but they have also ignited public outrage and debate over the flaws and biases of the justice system. Let's get started. 1. Casey Anthony. In 2011, Casey Anthony was acquitted of murdering her 2-year-old daughter, Kaylee. The evidence against her was compelling. The prosecution presented forensic evidence that showed the child's body had been wrapped in duct tape and disposed of in the woods near the family's home. But the defense raised enough reasonable doubt by presenting alternative theories of how the child may have died, and by challenging the prosecution's evidence. The acquittal shocked the nation, and many people believe that justice was not served. 2. O.J. Simpson. One of the most notorious and controversial trials in U.S. history, O.J. Simpson's trial for the murders of his ex-wife Nicole Brown Simpson and her friend Ron Goldman, ended in his acquittal. The prosecution presented evidence that included DNA, hair, and fibers found at the crime scene and in Simpson's car. Despite this evidence, the defense was able to cast doubt on the investigation and the credibility of the prosecution's witnesses. The trial was also marked by racial tensions and media frenzy, which made the verdict even more contentious and polarizing. 3. George Zimmerman. The case of George Zimmerman, who was acquitted of killing Trayvon Martin in 2013, ignited a national debate about race and gun violence. Zimmerman claimed he acted in self-defense when he shot the unarmed 17-year-old Martin during a confrontation in a Florida neighborhood. The prosecution argued that Zimmerman had profiled and pursued Martin because of his race and that he had no justification to use lethal force. However, the defense was able to raise enough doubt about the events leading up to the shooting to secure the not guilty verdict. 4. Michael Jackson. Despite being one of the most beloved and celebrated entertainers of all time, Michael Jackson was accused of sexually abusing children on multiple occasions. In 2005, he was acquitted of all charges related to one such allegation. The prosecution presented a witness who claimed to have seen Jackson molesting a boy, as well as other evidence of inappropriate behavior. The defense countered that the accuser's family was motivated by financial gain, and that the evidence was weak and circumstantial. 5. Robert Blake actor. Robert Blake's trial for the murder of his wife, Bonnie Lee Backley, was a high-profile and sensational case that ended in his acquittal. The prosecution presented circumstantial evidence that suggested Blake had hired someone to kill his wife, as well as testimony from a retired stuntman who claimed Blake had solicited him to carry out the hit. However, the defense was able to cast doubt on the credibility of the prosecution's witnesses and raise questions about the police investigation. 6. Amanda Knox. Amanda Knox was accused of murdering her British roommate, Meredith Kercher, in Italy in 2007. She spent 4 years in prison before being acquitted in 2015. The case was marked by media frenzy, public scrutiny, and conflicting narratives of what had happened on the night of the murder. The prosecution claimed that Knox and her boyfriend, Rafael Solicito, had sexually assaulted and killed Kercher in a drug-fueled frenzy. However, the defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial and that the prosecution had presented a flawed case. After multiple appeals and legal proceedings, Knox and Solicito were eventually exonerated. 7. Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy is one of the most infamous serial killers in American history, and he was known for his charm, intelligence, and ability to evade capture. Despite being implicated in numerous murders and violent crimes, Bundy was only ever convicted of 3 murders in Florida in 1979. The evidence against him was strong, including eyewitness testimony and forensic evidence, but Bundy was able to represent himself during the trial and exploit procedural loopholes. He was eventually executed in 1989, but he remains a symbol of the failures of the justice system to prevent and punish violent criminals. 8. Amanda Knox. Amanda Knox was a New Jersey woman who was accused of murdering her newborn daughter in 2009. The case relied heavily on circumstantial evidence, including a torn-up pregnancy test and Cox's conflicting statements about her pregnancy. However, the defense argued that the baby was stillborn and that Knox was not aware she was pregnant until she gave birth. The jury found her not guilty of murder, but guilty of a lesser charge of child endangerment. 9. Dominique Strauss-Kahn. Dominique Strauss-Kahn was the head of the International Monetary Fund and a leading contender for the presidency of France when he was accused of sexually assaulting a hotel maid in New York City in 2011. The case was marked by international attention and political intrigue, and the prosecution's case against Strauss-Kahn seemed strong. However, the defense was able to raise questions about the maid's credibility and motives, and the charges were eventually dropped. 10. Phil Spector. Legendary music producer Phil Spector was accused of murdering actress Lana Clarkson in 2003. The prosecution presented a case that included forensic evidence and testimony from women who claimed Spector had threatened them with guns in the past. However, the defense argued that Clarkson's death was an accidental suicide and that the prosecution had presented a flawed and biased case. The first trial resulted in a hung jury, but Spector was eventually convicted in a second trial in 2009. These are just a few examples of the complex and often controversial cases that have left a mark on the justice system and on the public imagination. The fact that these criminals were proven not guilty despite overwhelming evidence and public outrage highlights the flaws and biases of the justice system. It also serves as a reminder that the truth is not always clear-cut, and that the process of finding justice can be a difficult and sometimes flawed one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on the Horror Hive.